The clock is ticking in the background and I take a sip of my cup of tea. It's way too quiet in the house. Where is Helen? She said she was going to be late. Hey, hun, I'm just making some tea. You want any? I call out from the kitchen, but of course she's not here. The realization hits me, and I feel my heart sink. My wife is pacing the floor, barely noticing the expensive hardwood we had installed last year. My phone dings. It's not her. So, John, golf on Saturday? I reply, wouldn't miss it, with a smiley face. She used to mock me for playing golf on the weekends. Now she seems happy when I tell her I'm going out for 18 holes. After hitting send, I scroll up and look at the message again. I can't help it. I can't stop thinking about last night. K. That's what it had said. It had been 3 weeks ago now. I had been sitting on the couch when her phone buzzed with a notification. She had been in the shower, and I couldn't help but look. I didn't recognize the number, nor did I recognize the initial. K. I take another sip of tea and try to stop thinking about it. That text message had consumed my thoughts ever since I'd seen it, and I couldn't seem to get over it. It wasn't just that one message either. It was the way she was always late coming home, and the fact that she didn't seem to want to talk to me anymore. Something was going on, and I was going to get to the bottom of it. At the same time, I could feel my anxiety growing. What if I was wrong? What if I was just being paranoid? What if I confronted her and she left me? I didn't want that to happen, but I couldn't go on living like this either. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made my heart skip a beat. Helen was home. I stood up, took a deep breath, and prepared myself for the conversation we were about to have. John, what are you doing up? Helen's voice is the same fake chipper tone she's been using with me recently. Making some tea, I reply, keeping my eyes averted. Rough day at work? She puts her keys in the bowl by the door, yet another memory of a time when my life was still real. Brutal. Kyle wanted the Henderson portfolio redone for tomorrow's meeting. Kyle. K. I didn't want to reveal how much I knew about this person, so I asked simply, he's the new account manager? Yeah, she says, scrolling on her phone. He's been here for a couple months. I told you about him, right? Had she? She'd been telling me a lot of stories about her work lately, but never going into much detail. I watched as she looked through her phone to find the message. She turned away from me slightly as she did so. Do you want some tea? I ask again, getting to my feet. I can brew a new pot. No, that's okay, sweetie. I should just wash up and get some rest. Got a meeting in the morning. She came over and gave me a peck on the cheek. Her perfume was different from usual, I noticed. Helen, I call out before she heads up. I was thinking we could do dinner this weekend, that Italian place you mentioned. She stands on the first step, hesitating. Oh, you mean this weekend? I have that charity event on Saturday, remember? I don't remember, because she never told me, but I nod anyway. Right, of course. Maybe next weekend then. Definitely, she says with a smile that seems to have lost some of its warmth. We'll plan something special. I hear her going up the stairs. A few minutes later, the sound of the shower echoes down from the bathroom, and I am left alone. Frank's voice message is followed by another text message. Bringing Michael and Kyle along on Saturday. Kyle's new in town, seems like a decent guy. You'll like him. I read the name again. Kyle. K. The shower is still running upstairs. Her phone is probably on the bathroom counter, just like it was 3 weeks ago. I put the teacup in the sink. The sun's rays are slowly fading away, and the kitchen is bathed in a warm, orange light. The clock on the wall is ticking, counting down the minutes until it's time to go to bed. Time to lie next to her for another long, sleepless night. I stand there for a few more minutes, listening to the sound of the water upstairs, wondering if I will find out something on Saturday. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's nothing to find out. But what if I'm not? What if my worst fear is true? I don't know what I would do if it was. The shower is turned off. I take a deep breath and start walking toward the stairs. I'll have to wait and see what happens on Saturday. Until then, I'll have to pretend like nothing is wrong. I lay awake all night, thinking about what I should do if it turns out she's cheating on me with someone at work. In the morning, we go through our usual routine. The sunlight was coming in through the windows, and Helen was sitting at the table, drinking coffee and looking at her phone. She had the newspaper opened up in front of her. Hey, the Andersons asked us over for dinner tonight, I say, sipping my coffee. Did they? She replies, half listening, her eyes glued to her phone. That's nice of them. Yeah, I told Sarah we'd be there. 7 p.m. She hesitated for a brief moment, something I would have missed 2 months ago. Tonight? I might have to stay late at the office again, John. You know, the Henderson account? With Kyle? I blurt out before I can stop myself. She looked at me. Yes, with Kyle and the others. Why? Just curious. Wanted to know what time you get back. The silence hangs in the air. I can hear a lawnmower outside, the sound of it echoing through the open window. I should get going, Helen finally says, standing up and gathering her toast. I'll text you about dinner later. She gives me a quick peck on the cheek as she passes me, and I can't help but feel like it's a little too casual, a little too distant. A few hours later, Frank and his wife come over to visit. They brought a bottle of wine, and we were about to open it when Helen came home. She looked surprised to see them, but quickly hid it with a smile. Oh, what a nice surprise, she says, placing her keys in the key bowl. Sarah was smiling at Helen. We just wanted to make up for dinner, since you couldn't join us tonight. Helen looked surprised. Oh, actually I finished up early. I could still meet you guys for... Ah, but it's perfect, Helen says, cutting in. More personal. We sit down in the living room, and I notice Helen is sitting in the armchair instead of next to me on the couch. She laughs at everything I say and keeps checking her phone. Kyle's been coming out with us these last few weekends, Frank says, and I feel my grip tighten on my glass. He's a hell of a golfer. Is he? I ask. Helen says he's great with customers. The best, Helen adds, staring into her glass. He's a good find, Sarah leaned forward. And single too, although I heard he might be dating someone. There was a short but awkward silence. Office rumors, Helen waves off with an almost rehearsed chuckle. Water cooler talk. The conversation turned to other topics, but I wasn't listening. I was counting the number of times Helen glanced at her phone, and how her answers became shorter by the minute. Once Frank and Sarah had left, Helen immediately began cleaning up. They sure knew a lot about Kyle, I say, standing by the kitchen counter. Small town, she says, scrubbing wine glasses like they insulted her. Everyone knows everyone. Do they? She turned back toward me and said, What do you mean by that? Nothing, just curious. Are you? She sounds a little angry now, because it sounds like you're fishing for something. I locked eyes with her. Do I have to worry about this? The faucet continued to run in the background. After a long pause, she turned off the water and slowly began drying her hands. I'm heading to bed, John. I'm tired. As she passed by me, I smelled that same unfamiliar perfume. I called out to her before she made it to the stairs. Golf was fun last weekend. She stopped on the first step and looked back at me. That's nice. Yep, Frank says Kyle's a real ladies' man. She gripped the railing. Whatever you're trying to say, I'm not saying anything, just talking about my day like we always do. She turns around, and for a split second I see a hint of something in her eyes. Fear, guilt, but it disappears as fast as it appeared. I have a meeting in the morning, she whispers. Good night, John. I hear her footsteps on the stairs. There's a wine glass in the sink, half washed. I pick it up and look at the lipstick on the rim, the red wine droplets still clinging to the crystal. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I took it out, seeing a text from my friend Frank. See you Saturday. Golf game is still on. Kyle got a promotion. He's bringing stogies for us all. I set the wine glass back down in the sink. A little too hard, maybe. I heard a text notification sound coming from upstairs, followed by the sound of the bedroom door closing. Tomorrow is Friday, I thought to myself. Just one more day. One more day until my golf game with Frank and the rest of the guys. One more day until I would get to meet the man who had signed those messages with an initial K. The rest of Friday went by in a blur. I don't remember much of it, just that I didn't sleep very well Friday night. The morning sun is harsh and bright as I watch Helen's car drive away. I take a sip of my coffee, realizing it's been sitting for too long and has gone cold. The house is quiet, but I'm not alone. I wait 15 minutes, half an hour, just to be sure she won't come back for something she forgot. Then I open up my laptop and pull up the email from Amazon with my recent order. We're not like this, I say aloud, though no one's in the room to hear me. The GPS tracker came in the mail today. I also received a link to the software to download. I had to go through a number of hoops to purchase it anonymously, but it was worth it. I didn't want it to be traceable. There was a text message from Frank. Kyle's coming tomorrow. He said he has a good reason to drink. I clench my jaw and type back a vague answer. All right, I say to myself, taking my car keys in hand, just one thing at a time. It's a 12-minute drive to the parking garage where Helen goes to work. I remember her spot C47, since I used to meet her there for lunch sometimes. The parking garage is mostly empty. I walk over to her car and put the tracking device on the underside of the rear bumper. Yes? I nearly jumped out of my skin when I saw the security guard standing 20 feet away with a clipboard. Checking my wife's tire pressure, I say, standing up. She said it was low. The guard nodded. Better safe than sorry. I keep telling her that, I said with a laugh. When I got home, I downloaded the software and installed it on my computer. It was easy to set up, and within a short while, I was able to see everything Helen was doing on her phone. First, it was an email notification. Last night was amazing. See you again this evening? K. I drop my coffee mug. It shatters on the kitchen floor. Another text. Can't wait to see you in that dress again. Helen's car is still at her office. It hasn't moved. Yet. My phone rang. It was Michael. Hey, John, you have a second? Yeah, I reply, trying my best to sound normal. What's up? Helen said you might not be joining us for golf tomorrow. Is that true? She never told me she was going golfing. She did? That's weird. Okay, I'll come. Great, Michael says. Kyle's been wondering about you, says he's excited to finally meet Helen's husband. Something about the way he says it makes my skin crawl. Has he? Yeah, I like him. Says he and Helen work on a lot of projects together at the office. Huh. The tracker says she's on the move. Michael, I need to leave. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up and watched as the little circle representing her car moved across the map. It was going in the wrong direction. She wasn't on her way home. She was heading west, toward the new condos along the river. Another notification popped up. She had a reservation for dinner at a fancy restaurant, but it wasn't in her name. It was under the name of a man named Kyle Richardson. My phone rang again. It was Frank. Moved our tea time to 9 a.m. Kyle demanded it. He has afternoon plans. He probably knows. The vacuum cleaner goes silent. I look up and see Rosa in the door opening, looking worried. Senor Ellis? The coffee. I looked at the mess I still hadn't cleaned up. I'm sorry, Rosa. Let me help you with that. No, I clean. You fine? I try to smile. Yes, I'm fine. Just a bit clumsy today. I pick up the larger pieces of the mug and glance at my phone again. Helen's message to Kyle reads, Can't wait. Wearing your favorite. I squeeze too hard on one of the shards, cutting my palm. The pain is distant, overshadowed by the turmoil inside me. Rosa offers me a Band-Aid, her eyes filled with empathy. I accept it with a nod and retreat to my home office, leaving her to clean up the mess. Helen's car has stopped. I check the address. It's a luxury condominium building across town. Frank sends me one last text. Kyle says he's got big news tomorrow. Says it'll change everything. I sit down at my desk and stare at the screen. My heart is racing, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. I watch as Helen's car remains parked at the condo building for over half an hour. The grandfather clock chimes 11, and I open my calendar to schedule tomorrow's tea time. 9 o'clock. Golf with Frank, Michael, and Kyle. I'll meet the man who's been sending messages to my wife. I type in the details and close the calendar. Rosa is vacuuming the living room, humming a tune. I can still smell the coffee on the floor. I grab my phone and send a message to Frank. Looking forward to meeting Kyle. I'll bring my A game. His response is quick. That's the spirit. See you at 9. I put down my phone and stare out the window. Autumn leaves are falling from the trees, coloring the ground in shades of orange and red. I picture Helen with Kyle, in his apartment, laughing and holding each other. The image makes my stomach turn. The GPS tracker pings. Helen is on her way back to the office. I wonder if she kissed Kyle goodbye. I wonder if she ever loved me as much as she loves him. The grandfather clock strikes midnight, and I know I should go to bed. I need to be well rested for tomorrow. I need to keep my wits about me, but I can't sleep. I can't stop thinking about Helen and Kyle and what I'll do when I finally meet him. I close my laptop and walk to the kitchen. Rosa has left, and the house is eerily quiet. I pour myself a drink and sit at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where the coffee stain used to be. The house is clean, but my life is a mess. I finish my drink and pour another one. Tomorrow, I'll confront Kyle. I'll look him in the eye and shake his hand, pretending to be his friend. And then I'll make him pay for what he's done. I spend the next few hours trying to sleep, but it's impossible. I keep thinking about Helen, about Kyle, about everything that's happened. I need to know more. I need to understand. I get up from bed and go to my home office, pouring myself a glass of bourbon on the way. I sit down at my desk and open my laptop again. I can't wait until tomorrow to find out more about Helen's affair. I need to know everything. By 3 a.m., I've learned more than I ever wanted to know. It's 3 in the morning, and I'm sitting in my study, staring at the screen. I've been doing this for hours now, watching my marriage fall apart, one email at a time. I want to stop, but I can't. As painful as it is, I can't stop reading. I need to know everything. I need to know the truth. Another email pops up. It's a conversation between Helen and Michael. "Miss you, boo. Had a great time last night," his text says. A text from Helen. "Wait for next weekend. Frank will be gone then." Frank, my neighbor, my golf buddy, one of the men she has slept with. I found out about him just 3 days ago after restoring some deleted pictures from her cloud backup. I guess that's why he takes such good care of his lawn. My phone rings. "Hey, John, you've been MIA recently. You all right, buddy?" I looked at the message from Frank, wondering if he had sent it from my bed. "Just work," I reply. "The usual." It was another email from Kyle. Kyle to Helen. "Can't stop thinking about that thing you do with your tongue." My eyes were closed, but I could still see the words. Kyle, Michael, Frank. Each one thinking he was the only one. "John?" Helen's voice startled me. She was standing in the doorway wearing her bathrobe. "Up late?" "Just doing some work," I say, closing the laptop. She puts her hands on my shoulders and starts to massage me, but her touch feels like it's burning me. "You're so stressed," she says. "Yeah, things are weird," I reply. "Come to bed?" "In a bit." When she was gone, I opened up the laptop and saw there was a new picture. Helen and Michael, again at a different restaurant. He was touching her leg underneath the table in the photo. My phone started to ring again. It was Michael this time. "Been a while since we played basketball, huh?" I can't believe his nerve. We used to play every Sunday morning before he started having his own private games with my wife. "Just life being life," I reply. "It's a lot." "Yeah, no fucking kidding," he writes, and I can picture the stupid grin on his face. My phone buzzes again. Helen had deleted a few more messages. That's been happening a lot lately. She thinks she has to delete them to hide them from me, but what she doesn't know is that I'm able to recover all of the deleted messages as well. I look at the deleted texts and see that she has made plans to meet up with Kyle for lunch tomorrow. The deleted message is added to the file I'm keeping on her. The file is getting pretty large at this point. I have a lot of evidence against her. Undeniable proof of her infidelity. Another text comes in from Frank. "Sarah's out of town next week. Boys' night?" I guess Helen wasn't planning on coming over that night. "Maybe," I say. "I'll have to check my schedule." It's morning now. I hear my wife's alarm clock going off upstairs. She's getting ready to go to work, I think. And to see her boyfriend. I find a folder on the computer labeled Insurance. Inside there are hundreds of files, detailing everything. She's been hiding her affairs from everyone, not just me. I hear her coming down the stairs. I close everything and open up a spreadsheet. "You didn't come to bed," she says. "Yeah, I guess I just got distracted," I answered. "Are you okay, John? You've been acting strange." I looked her in the eyes. "Have I? I hadn't noticed." She stared at me for a second, and I wondered if she could see anything in my eyes. Do guilty people seem more suspicious, or is it just in their own mind? "I'll be late tonight," she says. "Don't wait up." "Kyle's presentation?" I ask, acting oblivious. There was a hesitation. Then, "Yes. How did you know?" "You told me last week," I bluff. She nods again, but there is a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Good. That's what I want to see. After she's gone, I return to the computer. A new email has arrived. This one is from Helen to Michael. It reads, "Miss you. Soon." I grip the mouse tightly, hearing the plastic casing crack slightly beneath my fingers. My phone pings one last time. It's a text from Kyle, asking if I want to play golf this weekend. Frank said I was free, he adds. I look at the message for a long time, feeling a sense of calm resolve settling in my chest. It was almost too easy, really. They never expected anyone to find out. Wouldn't miss it, I reply, smiling for the first time in weeks. The sun is up by now. I can feel the warmth of it coming in through the windows. I wonder if Helen is at work yet. Frank is probably out watering his grass. Michael is maybe at the gym. Kyle is practicing his presentation for later, for the one that will make Helen want to fuck him in the hotel room. I check my calendar. They all have a busy day today. I close my laptop. It's time to get to work. It took me 3 days to get all the information I needed. I barely slept during that time. I survived on coffee and adrenaline. By the time Saturday came around, I had everything I needed to destroy their lives. I laid out all the evidence in front of me on my desk. I still had the tracking software running as well, showing Helen's location as she traveled around town. There were several folders of evidence, so I started going through them one at a time. The first one was labeled Kyle. Of course, I muttered, seeing the pictures of Helen with the man from Riverpoint condominiums. There were pictures of them going into hotels together, receipts from those same hotels, and text messages, which were difficult to read. They were so disgusting. My phone began to ring again. Sarah's book club. Want to come over for dinner? I picture him writing this as he watches Helen leaving his house. I reply, sorry, busy with work, maybe next time, I say. Lying has become second nature for us. Next up is Michael, my best friend for almost 2 decades. We have been through so much together. He was the best man at my wedding, and I am the godfather of his children. I print out his file as well. Pictures of him and my wife sneaking into hotels, text messages about when and where to meet, and GPS data of where he has been when he was supposed to be somewhere else. The doorbell rings. I check the camera feed to see who it is. Kyle is standing on my porch. John, I hope I'm not disturbing you, he says from behind the door when I get close. I tried to maintain a neutral expression as I opened it. Kyle, hey man. Just in the area. Helen said you work from home, so I figured I'd stop in. He's standing on my front porch, smiling at me like he hasn't been fucking my wife. Come in, I say. You want some coffee? Yeah, I'd love some. I took him to the kitchen. He looked around inside our house, perhaps trying to see if he recognized anything from Helen's stories. Nice place, he says, sitting at the bar. Helen has good taste. The coffee maker gurgled in the background. She sure does, Kyle replies, and the way he says it makes me grip the coffee pot a little tighter. I set the cup down in front of him, black just the way he likes it. Of course I know how he takes his coffee. I know everything about him. How's the Henderson account going? I ask. Good, great actually. Helen's been a big help getting that one over the line. I'm sure she has. He hesitated, hearing something in my voice. Hey John, I wanted to tell you something. I looked at him with interest. Oh? There's a role open at our firm, senior level. Helen said you have a background in corporate restructuring. That is rich. He wants to give me a job, all the while he's sleeping with my wife. She did? We really need someone like you, and it would be nice to see you at work more often. I sip my coffee slowly, not saying anything for a few seconds. That's very sweet of you, Kyle. I'll think about it. He stands up, sensing something in me that makes him nervous. Well, give it some thought. No pressure. Golf on Saturday? Of course. When he left, I went back to my office and wrote about this encounter as well. It seemed important. Helen had probably told him to come over here, I realized, to keep me on a tighter leash. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. Kyle said he was stopping by, she said. Everything okay over there? Great, I say. That's very kind of him. I had surveillance photos showing Helen's car parked several blocks away from Frank's house. Images of her sneaking in through his backyard when Sarah was at her book club. It all added up. I got another text message from Michael. It said, no can do, but soon. The printer keeps spitting out more pages of information. I sort through it, putting it into manila envelopes. A few minutes later, I get another text, this time from Helen to Kyle. He doesn't suspect a thing. Everything's going according to plan. I chuckle at that. When the printer stops, I have 4 thick stacks of paper, each one detailing the dirty secrets of a different person. I put them into the envelopes, labeling them, and put them in my safe. I get one more text from Frank saying, Kyle's going to do something big on the weekend. It's going to change everything. I'm counting on it, I say to no one in particular, shutting the safe. Now, all I have to do is wait. Wait for Saturday, and for everything to fall apart. I sit down at the computer and open a blank document. It's always good to have a backup plan, in case things don't go the way you want them to. The days go by slowly. I water my roses, keep an eye on the neighbors, and follow the usual routines. Wednesday turns into Thursday, and Thursday turns into Friday. My phone gets flooded with messages, just as I had hoped. On Saturday morning, it feels like the entire world is holding its breath. The newspaper is sitting on our kitchen island, but there are no big headlines yet. I've been up for hours making phone calls and sending text messages. Did you hear about Kyle? I say to Sarah as she waters her hydrangeas. Apparently, he was seen at Bella Luna with Jessica from accounting. She tilts the watering can, spilling water on her gardening clogs. Jessica? That's weird. I thought she was... She stops herself, looking back in the direction of her house where Frank is getting ready for work. Maybe a work lunch? I suggest, trying to sound naive. Helen said she's been working lots of overtime. The watering can lowered completely. She told you that? She can always tell. I picked up my phone to check the tracker. Helen's car was still at home. She was late today, which was unusual. I assumed I'd get a text from Michael any second. Sure enough, a text came in from him, asking if everything was okay with her these days. Does she? I answer. Haven't seen her. Frank said something about her being mad at work. Helen comes into the kitchen, looking flustered. Where's my blue folder? She asks, rummaging in her bag. The one you forgot at Kyle's presentation last week? There's a pregnant pause. What? Frank said he saw it in the conference room after everyone left. Oh, yeah. She pulls out her phone, trembling slightly. Are you okay? Yeah, just late for a meeting. A few minutes later, I got a text from Kyle. Weird vibe at the office. Helen acting strange. Know anything? What do you mean? I reply. Michael's been asking about her. Her phone started buzzing in her pocket, and she retrieved it while picking up her belongings. Remember, we're going to the Thompsons for dinner tonight, I say. But I have to stay at work late. Sarah was asking about you? Something about Jessica from accounting? The blood drained from her face as she said, Jessica? Something about Kyle? I don't know. I wasn't really listening. She drops her car keys. I gotta go. Gonna, try to make dinner. I decided to send Frank a text. Helen is acting weird after something Kyle said to her. Is everything all right at work? He responded almost immediately. Kyle, I thought it was Michael. Michael? Who's that? Nah, never mind. Doesn't matter. I grin at my phone, imagining Frank trying to put the pieces together. The doorbell rings. It's Sarah, holding her phone in her hand. John, I'm sorry to have to say this, but I heard something. About Helen and Michael. I put on my best confused face. Michael? You mean our Michael? Jessica, in accounting, told Linda that she spotted them at that new wine bar in the city. The one Kyle brought Helen to for their meeting with the new client? Her eyes widened. Kyle too? I looked surprised for a brief moment, then hid it. I'm sure it's nothing, I say, a bit unconvincingly. Sarah walks away happily, looking forward to spreading the new gossip around town. I know it won't be long before everyone has heard about what happened. A minute later, my phone buzzed again. Michael. Just talked to Kyle. He said something strange about Helen. What's going on? I don't know, I say. Frank seemed a little worried about something this morning. Just as planned, later that day. And Helen's phone began to receive an onslaught of messages. I could see her deleting them, trying to hide the evidence. But it was too late. I already had the messages in my files. First, there was one from Kyle. Do you think we should stop? This is getting out of hand. Then one from Frank. Sarah is starting to ask questions. I'm getting worried. And finally, one from Michael. Did Helen get back to you this morning? I didn't hear anything. I sent a last message to Sarah. Thanks for checking in on me this morning. Please don't mention it to Helen. She's got enough to deal with right now with the Kyle situation. Not long after, my phone rang. I have to cancel dinner, she says, sounding stressed. Something's come up. Sarah's going to be upset. She said she needed to talk to you about something. Silence on the other end. John? What are you doing? Nothing, I say back. Why? After hanging up, I monitor her progress through the tracking software, watching as she drives in circles around the city, avoiding her usual hangouts. Her life is beginning to come apart at the seams, and she doesn't even realize it. But she will, soon. The grandfather clock chimes in the living room, telling me it's time to get ready for the dinner at the Thompsons. Helen won't be there, of course, and I'll be able to play the part of the unknowing, supportive husband, while at the same time sowing the seeds of doubt among our friends and neighbors. Before putting on my jacket and leaving, I get a text message from Kyle. We need to take a step back. It's getting too complicated. If only he knew how complicated this was going to get. It took me another 2 weeks before I was ready to move on to the next step. The following day, I got in my car and drove downtown. It was still early in the morning, around 8, and I had plenty of time to stop by the office afterward. I parked in the underground parking garage of the Metropolitan Building and checked my phone one last time before entering the elevator. No messages from Kyle. Good. Everything was going according to plan. The office of Patterson and Reed, attorneys at law, is located on the 15th floor of the Metropolitan Building. I walk down the hallway, following the receptionist, with a briefcase at my side, filled with evidence of my husband's infidelity. Mr. Patterson will see you now, she says, motioning to a corner office with a wall of windows. He stood up from behind his desk. He looked exactly how I wanted him to look, a respectable and competent businessman. John Ellis, please sit down. I sat down in the chair across from him and put my briefcase on his desk. First, I want to make sure this is protected under attorney-client privilege. Naturally. He hits a button on his phone. Sandra, no interruptions, please. I open my briefcase and take out a folder. I've kept meticulous records. He's surprised by the amount of documentation I have. My wife is cheating on me, I say, with our neighbors, with my friends, with her coworkers. She's having an affair? He asks, intrigued. Affairs. 3 that I can say for certain, maybe more. I gave him the USB drive with the evidence. I hired a PI to help gather the surveillance footage, I told him. 2 months ago, she began drinking, I explain, pushing the next folder forward. I've been keeping track. The mood swings, the unpredictability, the lack of household upkeep. Impressive, he says, noting one of the more incriminating photos of Helen leaving Kyle's apartment in the wee hours. And slowly, I've been shifting our finances around. This really got his attention. Go on. I took out a couple of bank statements and investment portfolios as I continued speaking. I've moved a large amount of money to accounts that she has no access to. It's all completely legal, of course. Family inheritances, money I invested before the marriage, that kind of stuff. What about our shared accounts? I've been tracking all the money she's been taking out for her little activities. Hotels, presents for her boyfriends, mysterious cash withdrawals. Patterson nodded. You've got yourself a pretty solid case. What are you looking for? Everything, I say. I want her to have nothing, except for guilt and unfulfilled promises from her lovers. The cheating alone gives us a lot of ammo. Throw in the drinking, the shady financials. He drums his fingers on the desk. We could make her life a living hell. Exactly. He opened another file on his computer. What are the custody arrangements? No children. Just the house, the investments, our shared reputation in the community. Ah, he smiles like a hungry wolf. That's much easier. I picked up another file and opened it, showing transcripts of recent texts Helen had sent. She's getting sloppy, emotional. Her lies are starting to catch up with her. And these guys she's seeing, they're married. Every single one of them, minus one. Kyle Richardson. He just moved here, works with her at the office. Patterson makes a note. I imagine this would greatly affect their careers. That is, assuming their loyalty to her is still intact, I say. Which, after everything that's happened, I doubt it is. He looked at me, studying me for a second. You played your cards well, Mr. Ellis, he said. Most people come to me in a reactive state of mind. You came prepared. I had a good teacher. I point at the proof on his desk. Helen's pretty tactical, too. Are we going to file right now? I shook my head. Not yet. There's one more thing missing. The golf game? He looks at a screenshot of a text message. Saturday. when this all goes down the tubes. I'll get the paperwork ready. We can file it as soon as you give the go-ahead. And the money part? I'll have my guys look over it, but seems like you set it up pretty good. Not much wiggle room for her. I stood up. One last thing. I want this to get as much media coverage as possible. Local newspapers? All of them. My goal is to make her pay. My connections in the media are quite extensive. It will be too big of a story for them to pass up. I began to walk away, but he called after me. Mr. Ellis, a word of advice. You don't want her to see you coming. The second she realizes, she won't, I tell him. Not until it's too late. I get back into my car and have a look at the tracking software. It looks like she's at lunch. Her calendar says she's meeting Frank for lunch, but her GPS tells me she's at River Point Condominiums. No doubt she's with Kyle. Just then I get a text message from my partner, Michael. Helen's been acting weird. Everything okay at home? Perfect, I reply, putting my car back in drive. See you Saturday. I drove away from the Metropolitan Building. As I looked in the rearview mirror, I could see the office of Patterson. Soon, Helen's life would be ruined. I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when she realized I had taken everything from her. Her house, her money, her reputation, all her lovers, everything. I couldn't wait for Saturday. I had 2 days to prepare everything. I had to keep up appearances and make sure that everything was ready for tomorrow. I drank my morning coffee, sent the usual texts, and made dinner, all while making sure that every detail was meticulously planned. By Friday evening, everything was ready. I was sitting in the kitchen, waiting for Helen to come home from what she thought was another night of cheating. The envelope was sitting on the kitchen counter. I was standing beside it, waiting for Helen to come home from work. This was a little later than she usually stayed at the office, but not unheard of. It was 10 o'clock on the dot. I figured she would be back home in a few minutes. I looked down at the envelope on the counter, wondering if I should open it. The phone rang, and I picked it up immediately, hoping it would be her. It wasn't. It was just my private investigator, Patterson. Are you sure you want to do this? I could always call it off. We don't have to go through with it. I told him I was sure. I wanted to do this. I was tired of all the lies. I needed to know the truth. The door opened, and I heard my wife's footsteps. My heart started to pound faster in my chest. John, you're awake? She comes out from the kitchen looking a little bit less put together than before. Her lipstick is a tiny bit smudged. Is that you? I ask, careful not to sound suspicious. Yeah, long day, the Henderson account. With Kyle? She took a sip of her wine. Yeah, among others. We've all been working late. Yeah? I pushed the envelope back to her. I had a long day too. She's distracted, opening a bottle of Merlot. Yeah, it was really productive. I found something to read. The cork came out with a pop. Work-related? Why do you ask? I point at the envelope. Open it. She sighed and said, John, I'm tired. Can this wait until... No, it really can't. She notices the urgency in my voice and stops, her glass halfway to her lips. What is it? Why don't you see for yourself? She took it and looked at the first image. It was of her and Kyle entering the River Point condominiums, with a timestamp in the corner. John, go, finish it. The next photo showed her leaving through the back gate of Frank's house, then Michael's car parked in an underground garage, hotel receipts, text messages, GPS data. I can explain, she says. Oh, you can explain Kyle? And Frank? And Michael? I ask her, my voice disturbingly even. You can explain how you managed to fuck half our friend group and none of them were the wiser? She blanched. No, you don't get it. Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand every lunch meeting, every late night at the office, every charity event that kept you from dinner. I slide another picture across the table. I specifically understand this one. That's an interesting use of Frank's pool table. She holds onto the counter. For how long? Long enough. You know what else I know? I ask, taking out my phone and opening up some texts. I know that Kyle thinks you're going to break up with me for him, that Frank thinks you're his one true love, and that Michael... Well, Michael's always been a real go-getter. Please, she chokes out. Why? You didn't... She picked up her wine glass, her hand trembling. What do you want? She asked. Want? I chuckle. I want you to read it to me. The part about your drinking problem is pretty funny. And the way you use your company card. She dropped her glass of wine on the floor. You were observing me. Recording. There's a distinction. Her eyes went wide. The golf game on Saturday, Kyle said, Yeah, Kyle's looking forward to it. They all are. I get up, avoiding the shards on the floor. It'll be unforgettable. John, come on, we can figure this out. Figure it out like you did with Kyle, telling him about our marriage? Or Frank, about our plans? Or maybe Michael, about what happened in Vegas? She backed up into the fridge. What do you want? I'll go. Leave? I grin, and she recoils. Oh, Helen, you're not leaving. Not yet. We're going to have dinner with the Thompsons tomorrow night. Then there's golf on Saturday. Then, I point at the debris. Let's just say Patterson and Reed have a lot of plans for us. She looked at me as if she recognized me. You wouldn't do that. I wouldn't? You seem to be pretty convinced about what I would and wouldn't do, just like you seemed convinced I wouldn't notice. She slumped down onto the floor and sat there in the broken glass and spilled wine, saying, Everything. You'll take everything. Almost everything. I stacked the photos together and put them back in the envelope. I'll leave you your lovers. Not that they'll want you once this story gets out. Scandal isn't pretty. My phone dings with another message from him, but I ignore it, seeing Helen's mascara running down her face. You should get some rest, I tell her. We have a lot to do this weekend. John, she calls out to me. She sounds shattered. I stopped at the door. Yeah? When did you fall out of love with me? I thought about it for a second. When did you stop loving me? I leave her there, tears streaming down her face, and go upstairs to our bedroom. I'll have to deal with the fallout from this tomorrow, but for now, I'm content to listen to her cry while I fall asleep. It's been a good day. Everything is almost complete. The game is almost done. And Helen just realized she was playing it with a grandmaster. My phone buzzes one last time. It's Kyle confirming our tea time for Saturday. I reply, looking forward to it. Hope you're ready. Some games are more high stakes than others, after all. The next few hours are filled with restless sleep. I wake up early, just as the first light of dawn is creeping through the window. Helen isn't beside me, but it doesn't matter. The next morning, Helen is already gone when I wake up. I don't know if she slept in the bed with me or in the guest bed. If it wasn't for the faint scent of her perfume, I would have assumed the latter. When I arrive at Patterson's office, I see 3 of his associates going through the evidence against Helen. Filing went through, Patterson says, pointing to a chair. Local press is already ringing. Word got out somehow. I look at my nails. Too bad. Yeah. He hands me a newspaper. Tomorrow's edition. I look at the headline and grin. Local company caught in scandal. Infidelity. Fraud. My phone buzzes in my pocket. John, what the fuck? Sarah's freaking out. The membership director from the golf club just called us. That sounds like quite the predicament, I reply calmly. You should have thought of that before you did something so awful. Listen, you don't get it. No, Frank. I think I get it. Say hi to Sarah for me. Patterson looks at me as I hang up the phone. That's the 3rd one today. Mr. Richardson was especially angry. Kyle was never that great at managing his feelings. I adjust my tie. I take it he was suspended? Him and Helen, for potential embezzlement. Michael called again. I ignored it. Judge is sympathetic, Patterson says, with the proof and Helen's messy private history. The door to the conference room opens. Helen's lawyer walks in, looking nervous and unprepared. Mr. Patterson, my client is open to negotiating now. There's nothing to negotiate, I answer for him. We have all the proof we need. She's willing to be fair. Was she fair when we were married? Maybe if we could talk in private. I've said all I need to say in those documents. I get up, adjusting my sleeves. Your client made her bed. Now she can lie in it. A text from Helen appeared on my phone. Hey, I need to talk to you. Please. I showed the message to Patterson. All communication through my lawyer, he says back. I see some reporters standing around my car, and I stop for a moment to let them get a good shot of my brave face. Mr. Ellis, any comment on your wife's affairs? Just a difficult time, I say, in a measured tone. I trust the legal system will handle things appropriately. Back home, I can see that Helen has already packed her bags and left. Just looking at the bedroom is evidence enough of that. Good, I think, but I don't feel happy or relieved, only cold and calculating. Later that evening, Sarah Thompson shows up at my doorstep, holding a casserole and crying. I didn't know, she cries. Frank said he had to work late. I took the bowl of stew from her hands. None of us did, I said. The clubs banned them. Kyle's moving. I guess that's what happens when you tell the truth. My phone rang again. It was Helen's attorney. My client would like to gather some of her belongings. Any belongings she's owed will be itemized and sent to her, I tell him. She won't be returning to the house. The news is all about us, and I watch Helen's face and her many affairs shown on the screen. The focus is on the money, what she spent on hotels, trips, and stuff like that. Michael's wife is the next one to call. But our kids play together. You never know someone as well as you think, I say carefully. I got an email from Patterson later that night with an update. Helen had tried to log into our accounts but was denied. Her credit cards had been canceled. Her name was being dragged through the mud. Helen sent me one last text message just before midnight. You ruined it. I thought back to the first night I'd found out and how she had signed one of the messages to Kyle with a heart. No, Helen, I reply. That's your fault. It's late and I have to get to bed. More work to do tomorrow. More meetings, more papers to sign, more photo ops, more public sympathy. The plan is working perfectly. My phone dings again. Helen's attorney just called. She's agreed to all the conditions. Yeah, I bet she has, I reply. What other choice does she have? I draw the blinds and shut the curtains, turning off the lights. Somewhere in town, Helen is asleep in a hotel room, having lost everything she valued. Her reputation, her friends, her lovers, all of it. I might have lost something as well, but that doesn't matter. You can always rebuild. The important thing is that Helen lost. She made a mistake cheating on me, but that wasn't her biggest mistake. Her biggest mistake was thinking she'd get away with it. I go to bed and sleep like a baby. Helen and I are meeting tomorrow to finalize our divorce. Weeks passed, and summer turned into fall. I spent my days talking to lawyers and preparing for this final confrontation. A cold October morning, I stood outside the courthouse, ready to end this whole ordeal. I'm standing outside the courthouse, my soon-to-be ex-wife walking away from me and climbing into a taxicab. She was wearing the same outfit she wore on our wedding day, and I couldn't help but notice that fact. I guess she wanted some sort of symmetry to all of this. My lawyer, Patterson, came up to me with a stack of papers. Got the paperwork in. The judge was really complimentary about the documents. He was, wasn't he? I say, as the taxi passes us and heads off. I always was quite thorough. The news crews are still at the courthouse, getting their final shots for the story that has dominated the news cycle for the past few weeks. I give them the picture they want, the betrayed husband who has won the day. Mr. Ellis, any thoughts on the ending? I hesitate for a moment to make it look like I'm thinking. I guess that's all we can really hope for. Patterson leads me back to his car, avoiding any further questions. The wire transfers will be finished by this afternoon, he says once we're in the car. The house is all yours. I got a text message from Catherine, Michael's wife. John, I just wanted to thank you for revealing the truth. It needed to be revealed, I say, as the courthouse disappears behind us. The kids ask about Uncle Michael from time to time. I don't know what to tell them. Tell them that sometimes people aren't who you think they are. Patterson raised an eyebrow. You've done a pretty good job of handling all of this, he said. Have I? I wonder sometimes if I have. We pull up to my law firm's office building, a new one, not the place where Helen had slept with my boss. One more thing, Patterson says, pulling out one more envelope. Helen tried to access the offshore accounts. Highly illegal, of course. Would you like me to file it? I read the document, thinking of how Helen had found out that all her escape routes had been closed weeks before she realized she needed them. Hang on to it. Never know when you might need it. I entered my office and found Frank's wife sitting at my desk. John, I'm so sorry to call, but the board at the country club, they're meeting today about Frank's membership. I sat down at my desk and motioned for her to do the same. What do you want me to say, Sarah? Maybe that it wasn't all his fault. That Helen seduced him? That Helen tricked him? That Helen made him betray his best friend of 20 years? She flinched. I'm trying to salvage something from this. Isn't that what we all are? My phone buzzes with a new text message. It's from Kyle. I'm leaving town. I didn't want this. I held up the message for Sarah to see. He thought he was the only one, huh? They all did. That was her specialty. Throughout the afternoon, I received more calls from Helen's co-workers, from our mutual friends, from reporters, and I dealt with all of them in the same way. Now everyone saw me as the poor husband who'd been cheated on, and it suited me just fine. At the end of the day, I got one last call from Patterson. Helen's attorney got in touch. She's taking a job out of state. Requests to know if you'd be open to visitation. I stopped writing the message halfway through, realizing it was a waste of time. Later that night, I felt a strange sense of relief. I went home and poured myself a glass of scotch, sitting in my chair, looking at the clock as it ticked away the hours. My phone buzzed with one final text message from Helen. I didn't mean to. I read the words as the room grew darker, realizing she was still lying to herself. It doesn't matter what you intended, I reply. It matters what you did. I blocked her number. From somewhere outside, the sprinklers turned on and began to water the grass. I imagined Frank was clearing out his office, Kyle was buying a plane ticket, and Michael was telling his kids why Daddy wasn't going to be living at home anymore. The grandfather clock struck 9, and I raised my glass to toast the sound of it, and my victory. Sometimes the game goes down to the final seconds. Other times, you just have to play all 4 quarters. Tomorrow, I would have to answer more phone calls from friends and family. I would have to explain to them what happened. They would wish me well and say they would be there for me if I needed them, and I would thank them and say goodbye. But for now, I simply sat in silence, savoring my drink and listening to the stillness of the house, and somewhere in that darkness, I knew Helen was beginning to realize what she would have to do next. Because the game was over, and I'd won. Winter set in slowly, the days growing shorter and shorter as November turned to December and December turned to January. The house was emptied out over the months after that, the only sound the rustle of cardboard and packing tape. While the rest of the neighborhood put up Christmas lights and decorated their homes, I was taking mine apart, piece by piece, until that cold morning in February came, just as I had planned all those months ago when I held up my glass of scotch. The final moving box is loaded into the back of the truck. It only took me 6 months to sort through everything and pack it up. Not bad. It's a chilly morning in February. All done, Mr. Ellis, the head mover Mike tells you, holding his clipboard. We're all packed up. Great, just in time. The house stood at my back, the curtains drawn. I had to remind myself to replace those. Helen had picked them out. She'd done such a good job. My phone rang. It was someone from Patterson's office. All the documents are signed. We're good to go for Thursday. Great. And the movers? They're paid? Yeah, all sorted out. How's the new apartment? I look at the picture on my phone of my new penthouse in Boston. Fresh start. Perfect. I hear some car doors slamming shut outside and look to see Frank and Sarah Thompson standing at the edge of my driveway. Sarah still looks hurt. It has been 6 months, but I suppose that's not a long time. We thought we'd come by to see you off, she says, holding a casserole dish in front of her. That's very kind. He looks away, embarrassed. Hey, I heard you're moving to Boston. Yeah, new job. They gave me a great package. She hands me the casserole. For the road. It's your favorite. I take it, remembering the last time she did this. That's very nice. I don't know how portable it is. My phone buzzed again. It was Catherine. John? The kids, they wanted to say goodbye to you. They missed their uncle. I was about to call it put them on. There were many small voices on the other end. They sounded so innocent, so unaware of the destruction their father had helped cause. I responded to each of them in a friendly manner, noticing how Frank cringed every time. When the call was over, Sarah approached me. Have you seen Helen? I haven't, but I hear she's enjoying Seattle. That's a lie. She's in Chicago. But let them look for her there. It's better than the alternative. The moving men are ready, waiting. Must have gotten a good deal on the house, Frank says, almost as if to himself. Where there's a market, there's a buyer. I take one last look around. It's strange seeing the house this empty. The grandfather clock is already gone, the first thing I had moved out. The quiet ticking of it is gone now from the front hall, and the silence is eerie. Upstairs, the empty walls of our bedroom, my bedroom, are bare, the pictures of Helen and I taken down. I can still see the outlines of the frames, and remember what her face looked like in each of them. A news alert on my phone suddenly catches my eye. I glance at it and see the headline. Richardson Industries to restructure after scandal. I guess Kyle's dad's company was still suffering from the fallout of the game we'd played. I go back downstairs and see Frank and Sarah waiting for me at the door. "Will you come back?" she asks. "People move on," I say. I can hear the movers starting their engines. Time to go. I lock the door and test the handle to make sure it's secure. Then I put the key in an envelope for the realtor with a note about the garage door opener Helen never had a chance to fix. "John," Frank says as I begin to walk away. I'm sorry for everything." I look at him. "Everything you do, Frank. It comes at a price." The moving truck drives away with my stuff, and I follow it in my own car. I get a final text message from an unknown number. "I know you're on your way out. Can you hear me out?" I don't reply. The message was from an old conversation. The GPS gives me directions back to the highway, and I start the drive back to Boston. As I look back in the rearview mirror, I see Frank and Sarah standing on the lawn, waving goodbye. I look ahead again and see the highway approaching. I leave the town at 9:15 a.m. I throw Sarah's casserole in the trash at the first rest stop. It was a nice gesture, but in the end, that's all it was. The sun reflects in the rearview mirror, blinding me for a moment. When I can see again, the town has faded into the horizon. Just like that, it was over. I get on the interstate and set the cruise control to 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. Old habits die hard. They had played a good game, and in the end, that's all that mattered. My phone doesn't make a sound. I guess some things are better left unsaid. As I drive, I think about everything that had happened and how it had all led to this moment. It wasn't the ending I had hoped for, but it was the ending I had gotten. And maybe, in the end, that's all that matters.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.